She planted pills in my apartment, faked concerned texts, and got me cut out of the will, all for a house she wanted. Imagine discovering your lead accountant of 2 years didn't actually have an accounting degree, any certifications, or even a real name. I'm Sarah, 45, CFO, and Jennifer had been making up our books using YouTube tutorials. Jennifer came with perfect credentials. Resume showed University of Michigan accounting degree, CPA certification, 5 years at Ernst & Young. Her references were glowing. Jennifer's one of the best young accountants I've worked with, her previous manager told me. She interviewed brilliantly, answering technical questions with confidence, discussing complex tax strategies, even catching an error in our sample problem. Controller Michael was impressed. She's exactly what we need, he said. Board Chair Gregory approved her hiring immediately. $110,000 salary for a lead accountant who'd modernize our financial systems. What a steal, we thought. The competence was uncanny at first. Jennifer redesigned our expense tracking system, streamlined our monthly close process, even found $400,000 in overlooked tax credits. She worked late, never complained, always had answers. When auditors came, she handled them brilliantly, providing exactly what they needed, when they needed it. Your new accountant is exceptional, audit partner William told me. Whatever you're paying her, it's not enough. I gave her a raise after 6 months, promoted her to senior accountant after a year. She cried in my office, thanking me for believing in her. I've worked so hard for this recognition, she said. I had no idea how literally she meant that. The red flags were subtle. Jennifer always had excuses to avoid CPA continuing education events. Family obligations, she'd say. She never attended alumni events despite supposedly graduating from Michigan the same year as our board member's daughter. When people mentioned professors or classmates, she'd redirect conversations smoothly. I kept to myself in college, she'd explain, focused on studying. Her methods were sometimes unconventional. She'd calculate depreciation using formulas I'd never seen, but that somehow worked. Alternative methodologies, she'd say, showing me articles that supported her approach. I thought she was innovative. She was actually making it up as she went. Year 2 brought more responsibility and more creativity. Jennifer handled our international subsidiary reporting using a system she'd developed at Ernst & Young. It was unlike anything I'd seen but produced clean, compliant reports. She'd created our entire fixed asset register from scratch, built custom amortization schedules that auditors praised. When technical questions arose, she'd always need to research current guidance, returning with perfect answers and printed documentation. I admired her thoroughness. Michael joked she probably slept with accounting standards under her pillow. The truth was, she was staying up all night watching YouTube videos and reading accounting forums. The unraveling started with a LinkedIn notification. A real Jennifer Martinez, from Ernst & Young, had viewed my profile. Same graduation year, same university as our Jennifer claimed. But the photo was different, completely different person. I messaged her casually. Hi Jennifer, I think we might have a mutual connection. Do you remember Jennifer Chen from your Michigan cohort? The response chilled me. There was no Jennifer Chen in our program. It was small, I knew everyone. Why do you ask? My hands shook as I typed back, explaining I must be confused. But I wasn't confused. I was terrified. IT security Lisa helped me investigate quietly. Jennifer Chen's university transcripts were masterful forgeries, real courses, real professors, plausible grades, but Michigan had no record of her. The CPA certification? The number belonged to someone who died 3 years before Jennifer started with us. Her Ernst & Young references? The phone numbers went to burner phones, the email addresses to domains registered by Jennifer herself. Everything was fake. But here's the terrifying part. Our books were real. Our audits had passed. Our taxes were filed correctly. She'd been doing actual accounting work without any actual accounting education. I confronted Jennifer privately in my office, Lisa and our lawyer present. When I showed her what we'd found, she didn't deny it. My real name is Ashley Thompson, she said calmly. I'm 29, not 32. I never went to college, but I'm good at this job, aren't I? The casualness was stunning. When I asked how she'd learned accounting, she pulled out her phone, showed me her YouTube history, thousands of hours of accounting tutorials, CPA exam prep videos, Excel training. I taught myself everything, she said. Spent 2 years learning before I applied anywhere. Your books are perfect. Your audit's clean. What's the problem? The problem was everything. Every financial statement she'd touched was potentially fraudulent, not because the numbers were wrong, but because they were prepared by someone unqualified to prepare them. Our audit opinions were based on work by an uncertified accountant. Our tax filings, our SEC reports, our loan covenants all potentially invalid. William, our audit partner, went pale when I told him. 2 years of audits need to be re-examined, he said. This could destroy our firm's reputation. The board was apoplectic. Gregory threatened to sue everyone: Jennifer, me, Michael, the recruiters, the reference checkers. Ashley, I couldn't think of her as Jennifer anymore, offered to help fix everything. I know where every number comes from, she said. I can teach your real accountants my systems. The arrogance was breathtaking. She'd built our entire financial infrastructure on YouTube University and Excel forums, and now she wanted to teach actual CPAs her made-up methodologies. But we had no choice. Her systems, while unorthodox, were so complex that only she understood them. We had to hire forensic accountants at $500 an hour to reverse engineer what a fake accountant had built using free internet videos. The investigation revealed Ashley had done this 4 times before. Different names, different cities, same pattern. She'd study intensively for months, create elaborate fake backgrounds, work successfully for a year or 2, then disappear when things got suspicious. She'd made over $1 million as a fake accountant, fake financial analyst, even a fake treasury manager. I'm better than most real accountants, she insisted during depositions. They just memorized textbooks. I learned by doing. When prosecutors showed her the chaos she'd caused, companies restating earnings, executives fired, audit firms sued, she shrugged. They should judge work quality, not credentials. Ashley got 3 years federal prison for identity theft and fraud, though ironically not for bad accounting. Her work was actually error-free. She'd taught herself so well that forensic accountants found only minor issues, things any real accountant might miss. But the damage to our company was catastrophic. We had to restate 2 years of earnings, paid millions in audit fees, lost 3 board members including Gregory. Michael was scapegoated, never worked in finance again. I survived, but with permanent skepticism. Every resume now gets background checked 3 times, every reference gets verified by private investigators, every degree gets confirmed directly with universities. The aftermath revealed an uncomfortable truth. Ashley was right about being good at the job. Her YouTube-trained methods were sometimes better than conventional approaches. Her self-designed systems were more efficient than what we replaced them with. The real accountants we hired at twice her salary weren't as innovative or dedicated, but that wasn't the point. Trust in financial reporting requires actual qualifications, not just competence. She'd undermined the entire structure of professional certification, proved that anyone with Wi-Fi and determination could fake expertise convincingly enough to fool everyone. Ashley writes from prison sometimes. She's studying for her actual CPA exam now, says she'll do it legally this time. She includes helpful suggestions for our financial processes, improvements to systems she built. I throw the letters away unread, but part of me wonders if someone can teach themselves to be a better accountant than actual accountants. What does that say about professional credentialing? What does it say about us who believed credentials over capability? Ashley didn't just fake being an accountant. She exposed how much we rely on pieces of paper to prove competence that should be evident in the work itself. Sarah's story is mind-bending because Ashley wasn't just a fraud, she was a competent fraud who did the job better than qualified people. The fact that she taught herself accounting through YouTube well enough to fool auditors and executives for years, that's not just deception. It's an indictment of how we evaluate expertise. But the chaos she caused shows why credentials matter. Trust in financial systems requires more than competence. It requires accountability that comes with real certification. Ashley's arrogance in thinking she could bypass the entire professional structure, and worse, that she succeeded multiple times, shows how vulnerable our systems are to confident deception. Sometimes the most dangerous frauds aren't the incompetent ones, they're the ones who are actually good at what they're pretending to be. And if you thought these workplace betrayals were shocking, imagine discovering that the person you trust most in your professional life has been documenting your every weakness for years, waiting for the perfect moment to destroy you. Click here for our next compilation stories of betrayal so calculated, they'll make you question every professional relationship you've ever had. My name's Hadley, I'm 27 years old, and I work as an accountant at a firm downtown. 4 months ago, my older sister Gemma orchestrated an elaborate scheme to convince our parents I was a drug addict, all to steal my inheritance. She planted evidence, created fake documentation, and performed Oscar-worthy concerned sister acts until my parents completely cut me out of their will. The sickest part? She did it all for a house, the childhood home she felt entitled to despite already owning a condo my parents helped her buy 5 years ago. Growing up, Gemma was always the golden child. 4 years older, more outgoing, the the one who gave our parents Richard and Donna their first grandchild. I was the quiet one who studied too much and moved to the city for work. But I visited every Sunday, handled their finances, and was genuinely close to them. When they announced last year they were updating their will, they mentioned leaving the family house to me since Gemma already got a $100,000 down payment for her condo. Gemma smiled and said she understood. That smile should have been my warning. The first sign something was wrong came in January. Gemma started calling our parents with concerns about my stress levels. Hadley seems really overwhelmed with work. She'd say, she's lost weight, seems jittery, not herself. Complete lies. I'd actually been promoted and was the happiest I'd been in years with my partner Nico. But Gemma planted seeds carefully. Every family dinner, she'd watch me with fake worry, ask if I was sleeping okay, mention how my generation was so prone to burnout. My parents started asking if I needed help, offering to pay for therapy. I thought Gemma was just being weirdly overprotective. Then came the family dinner that changed everything. February 10th, Mom's birthday. I'd made her favorite lasagna. Everyone was laughing. Normal night. Gemma offered to get dessert plates from my kitchen while I was in the bathroom. 5 minutes later, she came back looking shaken, holding a pill bottle. I found these in Hadley's cabinet, she announced. They're not labeled. Oh my God, Hadley, what are these? The pills were white, unmarked. I'd never seen them before. Told everyone that, but Gemma had already started crying about how addiction runs in families, how Uncle Tony died from overdose, how she should have seen the signs. The next week, Gemma sent our parents articles about high-functioning addiction, signs your loved one is hiding drug use, how to stage interventions. She created a group text without me called Helping Hadley, where she shared concerning observations. My mom called me crying, asking if I needed rehab. When I denied everything, Gemma told them denial was the first sign. She even sent them fake text exchanges. Somehow she'd mocked up conversations of me asking her for money, talking about my supply, saying I couldn't stop. The technical quality was impressive. If I hadn't known they were fake, I'd have believed them myself. The anonymous tip to my parents about my dealer came in March. Someone called my dad claiming to be a concerned neighbor, saying strange people came to my apartment at odd hours. Described a man who matched nobody I knew. My parents drove to my apartment unannounced, convinced they'd catch me in the act. Found me and Nico watching British Bake Off in pajamas. But Gemma had prepared them for this too. Addicts were master manipulators, she'd warned. My normal life was just an elaborate cover. Every piece of evidence that proved my innocence became proof of how deeply I was hiding my addiction. Things escalated when Gemma brought her friend Melissa to Easter dinner, introducing her as a recovery specialist who happened to be joining us. Melissa spent the entire meal analyzing my behavior, noting my defensive body language and avoidance patterns. I later found out Melissa was just Gemma's college roommate who sold essential oils. But she performed her role perfectly, telling my parents I showed classic signs and needed immediate intervention. My parents were so scared, so desperate to help their daughter who didn't need help, that they believed every word. The breaking point came when my parents called me to their lawyer's office in April, said they needed to discuss some financial matters. I walked in to find them crying, Gemma holding their hands, Mr. Brennan looking uncomfortable. They'd changed their will completely. Everything to Gemma, nothing to me, until I got clean and could prove 1 year of sobriety. The house, the investments, even my grandmother's jewelry, all to Gemma for safekeeping. I begged them to believe me, offered to take drug tests, but Gemma had thought of that too. Told them I'd fake the tests, that addicts always found ways. I was destroyed but not defeated. My partner Nico, who's a nurse and understood exactly what was happening, suggested we check the family computer next time we visited. That's where we found everything. Gemma had forgotten to clear the search history. How to plant drugs on someone? Inheritance law in Michigan. How to fake text conversations. Signs of drug addiction to convince family. She'd researched for months, planned every detail. But the smoking gun was her Amazon history. She'd ordered the exact pills she'd planted from a sketchy supplement site. The order date was 2 days before Mom's birthday dinner. We also found something else: emails between Gemma and her ex-husband's lawyer about their divorce settlement. She owed him $50,000 by year's end or would lose her condo. She needed money desperately and saw my inheritance as her solution. The house alone was worth $400,000. She'd already contacted real estate agents about selling it once she inherited. Had renovation quotes, staging companies lined up. She'd planned to flip my childhood home before our parents were even dead. The confrontation was brutal. Nico had installed a hidden camera in my apartment after the pill incident, perfectly legal since it was my home. We had footage of Gemma entering with the spare key I'd given her years ago, planting more pills, going through my papers, taking photos of my bank statements. She'd been building her case for months, documenting my decline with staged evidence. When we showed our parents everything, the searches, the purchases, the footage, my mother collapsed. My father aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Gemma tried denying it, then claiming she was protecting them from my real addiction, finally screaming that I didn't deserve anything because I'd abandoned the family by moving 20 miles away. What gets me most about Hadley's story is how Gemma weaponized their parents' love and fear. She knew exactly what would terrify them, losing another family member to addiction, like Uncle Tony. That's not just greed, that's psychological warfare against your own blood. And the parents? They meant well, but their readiness to believe the worst about Hadley shows how even loving families can be turned into weapons against each other. But if you think that's twisted, wait until you hear what Kellen discovered about his twin brother. Imagine finding out your sibling isn't just stealing your identity, they've built an entire life as you, complete with a wife, a career, and a baby on the way. And the worst part? Everyone in that life thinks they know the real you. He didn't just steal my identity, he built an entire life using my degree, my resume, and my name. My name's Kellen, I'm 30 years old, and I'm a high school history teacher in Michigan. 3 months ago, I discovered my twin brother Kieran had been living as me in Texas for the past 3 years. Not identity theft in the traditional sense, he literally became me, using my college degree, my teaching credentials, my entire professional history to build a life I knew nothing about. The worst part? He has a wife down there, a beautiful woman named Madison who thinks she married Kellen Mitchell, thinks she knows my childhood stories, my dreams, my favorite foods. She's 6 months pregnant with my brother's child, but the birth certificate will have my name on it. Kieran and I were identical twins, but our lives diverged hard after college. I got my teaching degree, settled into a stable life with my wife Yara. Kieran struggled with addiction pills first, then harder stuff. 3 years ago, after he stole $8,000 from our parents' retirement account, the family staged an intervention. He agreed to rehab in California, a 6-month program. I drove him to the airport myself, hugged him goodbye, told him I'd be here when he got better. Started sending $500 monthly to the facility to help with expenses. Got occasional updates from counselors about his progress, except none of it was real. The first sign something was wrong came this past February. Got a letter from the IRS about unreported income from a teaching position in Houston. Figured it was a mistake. Someone mixed up social security numbers. Called them, spent 3 hours on hold, finally talked to an agent who insisted I'd been employed at Riverside High School in Houston for 2 years. Said they had W-2s, tax returns, everything. I taught at Lincoln High in Detroit, had for 7 years. The agent suggested I check my credit report for identity theft. What I found made my stomach drop. According to my credit report, I had a whole second life in Texas, a mortgage on a 3-bedroom house in Houston suburbs, 2 car loans, credit cards I'd never opened, all payments current, credit score actually better than my real one. Someone was living responsibly as me, building good credit as me, succeeding as me. My first thought was standard identity theft, but then I found the LinkedIn profile. Kellen Mitchell, history teacher at Riverside High, Houston. My college graduation photo as the profile picture. My thesis title listed, my student teaching awards, but the location was wrong. The job history after college fabricated. Whoever this was knew things only family would know. The nightmare deepened when I dug into Riverside High's website. There I was in the staff directory, smiling in a photo I'd never taken. Same face as mine, but something different in the eyes. Teacher of the Year 2021, coach debate team to state championships, the achievements I'd always dreamed of but never accomplished. The bio mentioned my wife Madison, how we met at a teaching conference, our shared love of Civil War history. I'd never been to any teaching conference. My wife Yara was a photographer who thought the Civil War was boring, but there was something familiar about the writing style, the joke about being a history nerd who married up. Then Madison contacted my wife on Facebook, not me Yara, sent her a message saying, "Hey, sister-in-law, planning a surprise birthday party for Kellen. Could she help?" Attached a photo of us at last year's school fundraiser. It was Kieran in a suit, his arm around a pretty blonde woman, both smiling at the camera like the happiest couple in the world. Yara called me at work, crying, convinced I had a secret family. Took an hour to calm her down, to convince her I'd never been to Texas. That's when we realized the truth. The face in the photo was identical to mine, but I recognized the watch our grandfather's Rolex he'd left to Kieran. I hired a private investigator named Torres, Used money I'd been saving for a house down payment. Within a week, he confirmed everything. Kieran never went to rehab. He'd taken the $5,000 I'd given him for the program deposit, used it to relocate to Houston. Used my teaching degree from Michigan State. We were both on campus together, though he'd dropped out junior year to apply for jobs. Forged transcripts, recommendation letters, everything. The school never verified directly with the university, just did a basic background check that showed a clean record. He'd been Kellen Mitchell, beloved history teacher and husband, for 3 years. The video call with Madison was the hardest thing I've ever done. Had to explain that her husband wasn't who she thought he was. She didn't believe me at first, kept saying I was confused, that I was Kieran trying to destroy her marriage for some sick reason. I showed her my actual teaching certificate, my real wedding photos with Yara from 4 years ago, family photos showing both twins. Watched her world collapse in real time. She was 6 months pregnant with what she thought was Kellen Mitchell's baby, had built a life with a man who didn't exist. Every story he'd told her about our childhood was real because they were my stories, my memories, my experiences he'd stolen. The investigation revealed the terrifying scope of Kieran's deception. He'd legally changed his name to Kellen Mitchell in Texas, using forged documents, married Madison under my name. Their marriage certificate has my name on it, the house deed, the car titles, his employment contracts, all in my name. He'd even been going to therapy as me, discussing his difficult relationship with his twin brother Kieran, who struggled with addiction. The therapist's notes, subpoenaed later, showed him working through guilt about cutting off his brother, about choosing stability over family loyalty. He'd turned me into the villain in his therapeutic narrative. The confrontation happened over Zoom. He refused to meet in person. Kieran looked exactly like me, but healthier, happier than I'd ever seen him. No trace of the addiction that had destroyed his 20s. He wasn't apologetic, more confused that I was upset. "You weren't using your full potential," he said. "I made Kellen Mitchell something special in Texas. You should be grateful." He genuinely believed he'd improved my identity, that having 2 versions of me succeeding in different states was somehow a gift. Said Madison loved him, their baby would have a good father. What was the problem? The complete disconnect from reality was terrifying. What haunts me about Kellen's story is how Kieran didn't just steal an identity, he lived it better than Kellen himself. That Teacher of the Year award, the debate championships, the happy marriage, those were achievements Kellen dreamed of but Kieran accomplished. It raises this terrifying question. If someone lives your life more successfully than you, are they stealing from you or improving on you? And Madison, she fell in love with Kellen's identity, but Kieran's execution of it. Who did she really marry? But identity theft is nothing compared to what Sage discovered. Imagine mourning your mother for 2 years, visiting her grave, processing your grief only to spot her at Target buying groceries with 3 kids you've never met. That's not just betrayal. That's psychological torture that makes you question everything you've ever believed about love and family. We mourned her for 2 years before I saw her at Target with 3 kids I'd never met. My name's Sage, I'm 24 years old, and I work as a barista while finishing my nursing degree. 2 months ago, I discovered my mother, Lydia, who we buried 2 years ago or thought we did, is alive and living 40 miles away with a new family. She has a new husband, 3 young kids, and goes by Linda now. We held a memorial service, scattered ashes we thought were hers. My dad hasn't dated because he can't move past her death. Meanwhile, she's been hosting PTA meetings and soccer practices, living the suburban dream she apparently always wanted. The accident happened in November 2022. Mom went hiking alone in the state park, something she did every weekend. When she didn't come home, Dad called the police. They found her car at the trailhead, her backpack at the bottom of a ravine, blood on the rocks. The search lasted 5 days. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers, combing every trail. They found her jacket torn up near a river, more blood, but no body. After 2 weeks, she was declared presumed dead. Swift water, they said. Body probably washed downstream, might never be recovered. We had a memorial with an empty casket, planted a tree in her memory, spent months in grief counseling. Dad fell apart completely. Warren, my father, aged 10 years and 10 months, stopped eating, barely slept, kept her voicemail active just to hear her voice. I moved back home from college to take care of him, deferred my senior year. We went through all the stages of grief together, held each other through the anniversaries, her birthday, their wedding anniversary, the day she died, created new traditions to honor her memory. He wore his wedding ring on a chain around his neck, said he'd never love anyone else. The grief was suffocating, but we were surviving it together, slowly learning to live with the hole she left. Then I saw her at Target in Riverside, 3 towns over, February 14th, buying Valentine's decorations. I was there getting supplies for Dad. We were doing anti-Valentine's Day like we had since Mom died, watching action movies and avoiding romance. This woman in the seasonal aisle looked familiar from behind. Same height, same way of standing with one hip cocked. But when she turned, I saw my mother's face with different hair, blonde now, shorter, but absolutely her. 3 kids hanging off the cart calling her Mom. My body went cold. She looked right at me. Our eyes met, and she turned away quickly, hustling the kids toward checkout. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I'd seen. Stood frozen in the Valentine's aisle until an employee asked if I was okay. Managed to get to my car, sat there shaking for an hour. Had to be wrong. Mom was dead. We'd mourned her, buried her, restructured our entire lives around her absence. But I knew what I saw. That was her face, her walk, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when nervous. Started driving to Riverside every day, sitting in parking lots, feeling insane. Finally saw her again at a Starbucks, with the same kids. Followed her to a house in a suburban development, beautiful 2-story minivan in the driveway, everything she'd always complained we couldn't afford. The investigation started with social media. Found a profile for Linda Coleman, married to Derek Coleman, mother of 3. The photos were carefully angled, but it was her. Birthday listed as different year, backstory about moving from Arizona, but the face was my mother's. Her kids looked nothing like her clearly. Derek's from a previous marriage. The wedding photos were dated 6 months before her death. She'd been living this double life, planning her escape while making dinner for us, kissing Dad goodbye each morning. The hiking trips were probably visits to Derek. The weekend she died was actually her moving day. My Aunt Miriam knew, had to. She was Mom's only sibling, lived 2 hours away, but they talked daily. When I confronted her with what I'd found, she broke immediately. Sobbed about how Lydia had been miserable, felt trapped, wanted a fresh start. Derek was wealthy, widowed, needed a mother for his kids, offered her everything she'd wanted: financial security, a big house, the picture-perfect family. Miriam helped stage the death, drove her to her new life, kept the secret for 2 years while watching Dad and me grieve. She showed me texts from Mom saying she was finally happy, that we were better off without her, that this was best for everyone. I confronted Mom at her new house while Derek was at work, kids at school. She answered the door in yoga clothes, face going white when she saw me. Invited me in like I was a stranger, offered tea. Her house was immaculate, family photos everywhere, but none from before. She'd erased us completely. 24 years of being my mother, 17 years of marriage, deleted. She tried explaining, said she'd been drowning in debt, depression, small-town life. Derek offered escape and she took it. Claimed she'd thought about us every day but knew we were strong enough to survive without her. Said it with a straight face, like abandoning your family was a gift to them. The worst part was her asking me not to tell anyone. To let Dad keep grieving, let her other kids keep their mother, let everyone stay in their alternate realities. "You're an adult now?" she said. "You understand sometimes people need to start over." She offered me money, $50,000 to keep quiet. Derek was loaded, wouldn't miss it. I could finish school debt-free, give Dad peace, let her other kids have stability. All I had to do was pretend my mother was still dead. She actually thought I'd take it, thought I'd become complicit in her abandonment for cash. The woman who raised me, who taught me about integrity, was trying to buy my silence about the ultimate betrayal. I told Dad everything that night, showed him the photos, Miriam's confession, everything. He didn't cry, didn't rage, just went completely silent. Drove to Riverside the next morning, but not to her house, to a lawyer. Started proceedings for fraud, abandonment, emotional distress. The legal complexity was staggering. She'd used a fake death to escape debt, collected life insurance Dad had to pay back, traumatized us for years. But proving intentional infliction of emotional distress was nearly impossible. She hadn't technically committed a major crime, just walked away, and let everyone assume she'd died. Miriam faced no consequences for helping. The system had no real punishment for what she'd done to us. What destroys me about Sage's story is the double grief: first mourning her mother's death, then mourning the mother she thought she had. The premeditation is staggering. Lydia planned this for months, maybe years, kissing her family goodnight while arranging her escape, and asking Sage to keep quiet, to let everyone live in their separate realities. That's not just abandonment, that's asking your child to become an accomplice in their own trauma. And if you thought that betrayal was calculating, wait until you hear what Indra discovered about her father. This man had been secretly recording every family moment for years, turning their private dysfunction into a true crime podcast with 50,000 listeners. Imagine finding out your dad's been monetizing your family's pain while pretending to be the concerned father. Your therapy sessions, your arguments, your most vulnerable moments, all content for strangers' entertainment. Every family dinner, every argument, every private moment, he turned our dysfunction into content. My name's Indra, I'm 21 years old, and I'm studying psychology at State University. 3 weeks ago, I discovered my father Calvin had been secretly recording our family for the past 2 years for his true crime podcast. Not just casual mentions, detailed episodes analyzing our toxic dynamics, predicting our inevitable family tragedy, and selling exclusive content to Patreon subscribers. 50,000 people have been listening to our private conversations, our arguments, my mother's crying, my brother's teenage struggles. The man who was supposed to protect us had turned us into unwitting performers in his monetized drama. Dad always loved true crime. Our den was full of serial killer documentaries, unsolved mystery books, forensic files, DVDs. We joked he should have been a detective instead of an insurance adjuster. He'd listen to podcasts during dinner, pause to tell us about cases, analyze family annihilators and domestic mysteries. Mom would roll her eyes, tell him to change the subject around my 17-year-old brother Maddox. But it seemed harmless. Lots of middle-aged dads get obsessed with true crime. We didn't know he'd decided our family was his next case study. The first red flag was finding a tiny microphone in our living room lamp. Size of a button, professional grade, definitely not from Best Buy. When I showed Dad, he said it was home security, that break-ins were increasing in our neighborhood. Made sense, except we'd never had security concerns before. Then I found another in the kitchen, hidden behind the spice rack, another in the hallway. Dad expanded his story, said Mom agreed to them, wanted to feel safer. But Mom, Portia, looked confused when I mentioned it, said she knew nothing about security upgrades. That night, I heard them arguing, Dad saying I was overreacting, Mom demanding to know what was really going on. 2 weeks later, my college roommate sent me a podcast link. Behind closed doors, An American Family Unravels, said it sounded exactly like my family's dynamics. I laughed it off until I listened. The host's voice was disguised, but the content was unmistakable. The eldest daughter shows classic parentification symptoms, while the father remains emotionally absent. That was about me. The teenage son's anger issues suggest deeper trauma. That was Maddox. The host played audio clips distorted but recognizable. Our Thanksgiving argument about college tuition. Mom crying after Dad forgot their anniversary again. These weren't just similar situations. These were our actual conversations. The podcast had 43 episodes. I listened to them all in one horrifying night. Each episode dissected our family like we were specimens. The mother's codependency crisis, teen son's descent into delinquency, daddy issues. How emotional neglect shapes daughters. He analyzed our body language at dinner, our communication patterns, our dysfunctional attachment styles. Predicted we were heading toward either divorce, violence, or complete family dissolution within 2 years. The comment section was full of armchair psychologists diagnosing us, betting on which family member would snap first. Some recognized our voices despite the distortion, started trying to identify us. The worst part was his co-host, introduced only as a female voice, also disguised, but she knew intimate details. Mentioned things that happened when Dad wasn't home, private conversations between Mom and me, talked about Mom's wine consumption, my anxiety medication, Maddox's failed driving test. At first I thought Dad had planted more bugs than I'd found. Then, A mentioned Dad's Thursday night work meetings with a knowing laugh. The Thursday nights he came home smelling like perfume. The Thursday nights his secretary Bethany always worked late too. The co-host was his mistress, and they were bonding over exploiting our family. Episode 37 made me physically sick. They'd analyzed my therapy sessions, conversations I'd had with my therapist over video during COVID, using the family laptop. Dad had screen recorded them, edited clips for educational purposes, discussed my dating anxiety, my fear of abandonment, my complicated feelings about him. Bethany laughed about my daddy issues being so predictable. They had a Patreon tier called Deep Dive, where subscribers could access full session recordings for $50 monthly. 300 people were paying to watch my therapy. My most vulnerable moments turned into premium content. I gathered evidence before confronting anyone, downloaded all episodes, documented the Patreon income $80,000 over 2 years, found the recording setup in Dad's car, professional equipment worth thousands. His laptop had folders organized by family member, hundreds of hours of footage. Videos of Mom sleeping, Maddox gaming, me studying. He'd been building a library of our lives, waiting for something dramatic enough to go viral. Found drafts of future episodes, When divorce becomes inevitable, the night everything changed, why I knew this would happen. He was anticipating our tragedy, maybe even orchestrating it. The confrontation happened at family dinner, the microphone still recording. I played episode 1 on the kitchen speaker, watched Dad's face go from confused to panic to defiant. Mom threw up when she heard her private conversations broadcast. Maddox punched a hole in the wall when he realized his friends might have heard the podcast. Dad tried explaining, said it was art, social commentary, that we were helping other dysfunctional families. When we mentioned Bethany, he finally broke. Admitted the affair, the collaboration, the money, said he felt invisible in this family, that the podcast made him feel important. 50,000 strangers cared about his opinions more than we ever did. Mom filed for divorce that night. The podcast exposed everything, not just the recording, but the affair, the monetization, the absolute betrayal. Dad's lawyer argued the recordings were legal since he was party to most conversations. Technically true, but the court cared more about the profit from our exploitation. Mom got everything in the divorce, including rights to sue for invasion of privacy. Maddox won't speak to Dad at all. I'm in therapy twice a week, paranoid about being recorded, unable to trust that private moments are actually private. The podcast is deleted, but screenshots circulate in true crime forums. People still recognize us, ask if we're that podcast family. The violation in Indra's story is so layered, the recording, the affair, the monetization, the therapy sessions. But what really gets me is Calvin's new podcast, where he's still exploiting them by playing victim. These people never stop performing, they just change the narrative. And those 50,000 listeners who paid to watch a family fall apart, they're enablers in this new era of trauma as entertainment. But even that pales compared to what Remy discovered at their grandmother's will reading. Imagine finding out your grandmother left everything to a grandchild who doesn't exist until you realize your cousin Brad has been dressing as a woman named Violet, visiting your grandmother with dementia, and stealing $2 million. That's not just fraud, that's evil wearing your dead grandmother's favorite perfume. The will named Violet, her favorite grandchild. None of us knew who that was until we checked the birth certificate. My name's Remy, I'm 28 years old, and I work as a paralegal at a family law firm. 6 weeks ago, at my grandmother Eleanor's will reading, we discovered she'd left her entire $2 million estate to someone named Violet Mitchell, supposedly her beloved granddaughter. Problem was, none of us had ever heard of Violet, 8 grandchildren in our family, and no Violet among us. What followed was the unraveling of the most elaborate elder fraud I've ever seen, orchestrated by my cousin Brad, who'd been visiting Grandma dressed as a woman for the last 2 years of her life. Grandma Eleanor died peacefully at 82, exactly how she wanted in her sleep, in her own bed, with fresh flowers on the nightstand. We thought we knew what to expect from the will. 3 daughters, my mom Joyce, Aunt Teresa, and Aunt Candace, would split the main assets. 8 grandchildren would receive smaller bequests, standard family distribution. Eleanor had been meticulous about fairness her whole life, kept a spreadsheet of Christmas gift values to ensure equality. So when lawyer Miss Chen read that everything went to Violet Mitchell, beloved granddaughter, the room went silent, then erupted. Who the hell was Violet? Miss Chen had documentation birth certificate showing Violet born to my mother Joyce 30 years ago, my mom's alleged signature on it. Mom went pale, said she'd never had another child, never signed anything. The birth certificate looked authentic, had the right hospital, the right dates around when I was born, but Mom only had me. No twin, no secret adoption, no lost pregnancy. Aunt Teresa accused Mom of hiding a child for 30 years. Aunt Candace suggested identity theft. The meeting devolved into screaming while Miss Chen tried to restore order. She said Violet had power of attorney, had been managing Grandma's affairs for 6 months. The signatures were all there, notarized, legal. Then came the photos. Miss Chen had a folder from Grandma's files labeled Precious Violet. Pictures of a woman with long auburn hair visiting Grandma at the nursing home. Always wearing sunglasses, always photographed from angles that obscured her face. But there she was, holding Grandma's hand, bringing her flowers, sitting beside her at the home's Christmas party. The staff confirmed, Violet visited twice weekly, sometimes more. She'd introduced herself as the granddaughter who'd been estranged due to family drama but reconnected with Eleanor in her final years. Always brought Grandma's favorite butterscotch candies, knew all her stories, made her laugh. The bank records were terrifying. Violet had already withdrawn $400,000 in the week since Grandma's death. Legal, because she had power of attorney and was the sole beneficiary. The house was being prepared for sale, estate auction scheduled, everything liquidating fast. We tried calling the phone number on file disconnected. Address listed was a mail drop. Email bounced back. Violet Mitchell was smoke, but she was smoke with legal documentation and signing authority. Miss Chen said, without proof of fraud, her hands were tied. The will was legitimate, witnessed, notarized. Grandma had been evaluated as mentally competent just 8 months ago. Security footage from the nursing home changed everything. My mom demanded to see it, threatened legal action if they refused. The quality was grainy but good enough. We watched Violet enter the building, sign in at reception, walk down the hall. Something about the walk was familiar, too confident, shoulders too broad, stride too long. Then Violet turned toward a camera, adjusting her purse. Even with sunglasses and makeup, even with the wig and dress, I knew that jawline. That was my cousin Brad. 6'2" Brad, who'd been traveling Europe for the past 2 years. Brad, who'd always been Grandma's least favorite after he stole from her jewelry box at 16. The investigation revealed Brad's transformation into Violet was meticulous. He'd hired a makeup artist to teach him contouring, voice coaches for feminine speech patterns, even took estrogen supplements to soften his features slightly. Created an entire backstory. Violet had been born to Joyce but given up for adoption due to family pressure, raised in California, became a successful consultant. He'd forged every document, practiced Joyce's signature hundreds of times, built a paper trail going back years. The notary who'd verified the power of attorney was his girlfriend Melissa, who'd gotten her notary license just for this con. They'd been planning it since Grandma's dementia diagnosis. Brad had studied Grandma's life like an academic subject, knew every family story, every grandchild's birthday, every pet we'd ever had. When Grandma's dementia made her confused, he'd fill in blanks with constructed memories of Violet. Told her stories about Violet's childhood that were actually my memories, Teresa's daughter's achievements, Candace's son's jokes. He created a perfect grandchild from pieces of real ones, then inserted this fiction into Grandma's failing memory. By the end, Grandma genuinely believed Violet was her favorite, the only one who really visited, the only one who cared. The legal battle was swift but brutal. Brad tried maintaining the ruse even after being exposed, claimed he identified as Violet now, that this was discrimination, then pivoted to saying Grandma wanted him to have the money, that Violet was just a necessary fiction to achieve her true wishes. Finally admitted it was all fraud but argued Grandma was happy in her final years because of Violet's visits. The security footage of him literally counting cash in the parking lot after visits didn't help his case. Neither did the text to Melissa about hitting the jackpot and planning their retirement to Costa Rica. Brad was arrested for elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and identity theft. But he'd already spent 400,000 cars, debts, cryptocurrency he claimed he couldn't access. Melissa flipped immediately, testified against him for immunity. Revealed he'd done similar scams before, just never this elaborate. Had a storage unit full of wigs, makeup, different identity documents. The FBI found evidence of 6 other elderly victims across 3 states, smaller amounts but same pattern. Brad would become their perfect relative, the one who understood them, visited them, loved them while their real families were too busy. The cruelty of Remy's story is in that final detail. Eleanor died believing in Violet's love, while her real grandchildren were erased from her failing memory. Brad didn't just steal money. He stole a dying woman's final connections to her actual family. And the fact he'd done this before, that he had a storage unit full of different identities, that's serial predation on the most vulnerable. And if you thought that was sick, this last story will make your skin crawl. Finley spent years believing they had chronic illness, too sick to leave home, too weak to work. Turns out their parents, a nurse and a pharmacist, had been poisoning them since high school. Every meal, every drink, carefully dosed to keep their child dependent and sick. That's not just abuse, that's attempted soul murder by the people who were supposed to protect you. I thought I had chronic fatigue syndrome, turns out they've been poisoning my food since high school. My name's Finley, I'm 25 years old, and I just escaped from my parents' house 3 weeks ago. For nearly a decade, I believed I had multiple chronic illnesses that made me too weak to work, too sick to leave home, too fragile to build an independent life. Turns out my mother Barbara, a nurse, and my father Gordon, a pharmacist, had been systematically drugging me since I was 15. Every meal, every drink, carefully dosed with sedatives and muscle relaxants to keep me dependent. They didn't want a sick child to care for, they wanted a permanent patient to give their lives meaning. It started in high school. Suddenly felt exhausted all the time, couldn't concentrate, muscles ached constantly. Mom took me to doctor after doctor, describing symptoms I didn't even know I had. Got diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, various autoimmune conditions. Made sense. Mom said these things ran in families, that she'd seen the signs early. Dad filled prescriptions, managed my medications with a color-coded chart. They rearranged their whole lives around my care. Mom went part-time to be home more. Dad set up a medical station in our kitchen. I felt guilty but grateful for such devoted parents. College became impossible. Tried starting freshman year, but collapsed during orientation. Had to be hospitalized. Mom stayed with me for 3 days, never left my side, cried about almost losing me. After that, online classes from bed became my only option. Even those were difficult. Brain fog made reading impossible. Hands shook too much to type. My younger sister Aria went to college normally, thrived even. When I asked why she was healthy, Mom said I'd gotten unlucky genetics, that sometimes one child bore the burden. Aria felt survivor's guilt, called weekly from school, sent care packages. She never ate Mom's cooking when she visited though, said dorm food had changed her tastes. The isolation was complete by 22. Too sick for friends, dating, work. My world shrunk to my bedroom, the living room couch on good days, hospital visits on bad ones. Mom brought every meal on a tray, special foods for my dietary restrictions. Dad prepared my medications, little paper cups 3 times daily. They were so careful, so loving. Mom would stroke my hair while I ate, tell me stories about her patients at the hospital. Dad researched new treatments constantly, printed articles about experimental therapies. Other parents would have put me in a care facility, but mine sacrificed everything to keep me home. The first crack in the truth came during a 2-week visit to my friend Quinn out of state. Mom had fought it, said travel would destroy me, but I insisted. Needed to prove I could do something normal, even if it killed me. Packed all my medications, special foods, everything, but somehow felt better there. Not cured, but functional. Could walk to the coffee shop, stay awake all day, even went to a movie. Quinn noticed immediately, said I seemed like a different person. When I got home, the symptoms returned within 12 hours. Mom said it was adrenaline wearing off, that I'd pay for overexertion. The crash lasted weeks, but the seed of doubt was planted. Started noticing patterns, felt worse after meals. Mom prepared, better when I snuck food from the pantry. Energy improved on days Mom worked late, crashed when she had days off. Found pills in the spice cabinet with labels removed, asked Dad about them. He said they were vitamins, snatched them away quickly, installed a food diary app, tracked everything. The correlation was undeniable. Mom's special meals always preceded my worst days. Started pretending to eat, flushing food down the toilet. Felt stronger within days but had to hide it, pretend to still be sick. The revelation came through my new doctor, Dr. Keating, who I'd found online. Insisted on seeing her alone, though Mom fought hard to come. Dr. Keating ran comprehensive toxicology panels, tests my previous doctors never ordered. Found 3 different sedatives in my system, none prescribed, all at dangerous levels. Benzodiazepines, muscle relaxants, antihistamines in doses that would floor anyone. She asked about my home environment, who prepared my food, who had access to my medications. When I described my parents' medical backgrounds, their devotion to my care, her face went dark. "Finley," she said carefully, "I think you need to leave home immediately." I set up a hidden camera in the kitchen, just 1 day of footage for proof. Caught Mom crushing pills into my morning smoothie while Dad stood guard at the door. They worked with practiced efficiency, Mom grinding tablets, Dad measuring doses, both checking the schedule on their phones. Heard them discussing dosages, Mom saying I'd been too alert lately, needed adjustment. Dad mentioned they'd have to be careful, that Dr. Keating was asking questions. They'd done this so many times it was routine, like making coffee. The casualness was more terrifying than anger would have been. Confrontation wasn't an option. They controlled my finances, my medical records, my entire existence. Instead, I called Aria, sent her the video. She drove from college that night, helped me pack while our parents slept. We found journals in Mom's closet documenting my doses going back years. Found research on Munchausen by proxy, printed articles about maintaining caregiver identity. Found something worse, obituaries of Mom's former patients who died young from chronic illness. 3 elderly patients over 15 years, all with similar symptoms to mine, all under Mom's devoted care until they died. She'd been perfecting this for decades. The police arrested them the next morning. The evidence was overwhelming, the videos, the journals, the toxicology reports. They didn't deny it, seemed confused by our betrayal. Mom cried about how she'd given up everything to care for me, how I was abandoning her after all she'd sacrificed. Dad said they'd only wanted to keep me safe, that the world was too dangerous for someone fragile like me. Even in handcuffs, they believed they were the victims. The detective said it's common in these cases the abusers genuinely believe they're heroes in their own story. What's most chilling about Finley's story is how the parents convinced themselves they were loving caregivers while systematically destroying their child's life. The Munchausen by proxy is horrifying enough, but those other patients who died? That suggests this wasn't mental illness, but calculated murder. And they're out on bail, still nearby, still believing they're the victims. Some parents don't just fail to protect their children, they become the very danger their children need protection from. And if you thought these stories were wild, trust me, what comes next makes this look tame. Because the next one isn't just about betrayal, it's about discovering everything you believed was a lie. Click here, and I'll show you why this next story might be the most disturbing one yet.